Hey, what's up, y'all? So we are in Franklin, North Carolina? Franklin, Tennessee. Kentucky. There's too many Franklins. But this is called Octagon Hall. It's there. You see it. You'll see it better in a minute. Supposedly here before the Civil War?
I think so.
Oh yeah, but the hall has so many different things. It's got a bunch of tragedies that happened to the hall. The hall was built in 1847 by that gentleman right there. That's Andrew Jackson Caldwell, and that is his second wife he's with, Harriet. And that picture was taken in late 1863. Lived in the house while it was being constructed. The odd thing about this house is that it actually took, technically, 12 years for him to finish the house. The house was finished inside, but the house wasn't totally finished until the last brick was laid. When he starts building the house, he uses handmade brick, and he puts the main stress-bearing wall all in brick, and that's why you'll see the door jamb so big. His first wife dies at a very young age of 30. She dies of typhoid fever. She bore 3 children to him. First child lives to be 89 years old. Stays in Franklin most of her life. The second child passes from injuries sustained from downstairs in the basement. She's down in the winter kitchen and embers the fireplace and catch her on fire. Doesn't die right away, lives for 7 agonizing days here in the house, and then joins Mom outside on that damaged rock wall out there from a storm that we had not too long ago. The third child was a little boy. He was 18 months old. His name was Andrew Jackson Caldwell Jr. Fortunately, AJ makes it to 18 months. He's playing on those staircases in the middle, and he takes a tumble and breaks his neck, and then he joins his mom out there. They're married for 12 years. Andrew dies in 1866 after the war. He doesn't get to see his last child born. She was born 2 months after he passed.
Right.
Oh.
When Andrew was building this house, he had a specific idea for this house. Andrew Jackson Caldwell was a Mason. He was a very high up Masonic member. He was a 33rd degree Mason.
Oh, okay.
And also active in state Masonry. When he builds the house, he makes the front doors directly to the west, look to the west. And if you draw a straight line through the house, the back door looks directly to the east. Now, what he does is he wants to continue that. This room, that room, the one above it, and the one below it, larger, so that he can put a window in the middle of the house. That window looks directly to the north, and that window looks directly to the south. There are 6 windows on each floor. Now we use 4 windows that are at an angle. He's an eccentric, and he figures out that each window is a place where the Solace and the Equinox are going to come over the house. Masons come in and they get to see some interesting stuff. They don't tell us anything. We know that they like the number 13. That's got 13-foot high ceilings in this room and that one. Downstairs to the basement, there's 13 steps going down. The way you used to get in the house was underneath the porch. That add-on allows us to have a storage area underneath the porch. He did hold Masonic meetings in the house also. The house has hiding spots and everything else in it. I don't believe that he made them afterwards. There's a tunnel in the house. There's also, so he was thinking ahead of the time. There's also rumors of other things around the house that we just haven't found yet. The house yields them when it wants to, and it's about time for it to yield something. As you're touring it, I'll show you some of the hiding spots that are here, so you'll be able to find them and look at them. The war starts here in February, comes to the house on February 13th, 1862. The Confederate Army is amassed in Bowling Green. That was the capital of the Confederacy here in Kentucky. Now, Kentucky had different stories. It was always a neutral state, but it was very north and south. They enlisted all and mustered in mostly in Bowling Green. Grant comes down and has a big battle in 62 over here at Fort Donelson. And he wins that battle. He comes back up, and as he's coming back up around that area, he is putting the word out that he wants all the Confederates out of Kentucky. So he has groups from Ohio, Indiana, and Wisconsin, and upper Kentucky move into Bowling Green. They surround Bowling Green. They don't have a battle there. They have 3 days of intense shelling, which really puts a hurt on the Confederate Army. In the meantime, if they get over the railway, behind the house, about a mile back there, you'll find a railroad track that goes through the old Louisville National, and Andrew is very instrumental in making it go through his property and into Franklin, Kentucky, and then down to Nashville. They had already taken the line, so the Confederates didn't have train transportation, so what they had to do is they had to leave Bowling Green and march into Tennessee. This house is about 18 miles away from Bowling Green, and then it's about another 8 miles into Tennessee. From their goal was their average march was about 20 miles. The gentleman who was leading it was a captain in the Kentucky 9th, and his name was John Caldwell. He knew of this house, knew of the way that it was constructed, the whole 9 yards. He also knew that there was 3 plantations here. There was the one across the street, which is an antebellum home. The one just north of this is Hampton Hall. This one sat in the middle of it. John Caldwell brings 9,000 Confederate soldiers and puts them in his uncle's backyard. So we had 9,000 Confederate soldiers here, a lot of them wounded. They were in a hurry to get to Tennessee, but at the same time had to take care of the wounded. So the wounded were brought into the basement. They were very big into doing amputations. They didn't have the medical stuff to be able to fight infection, anything else.
Right.
So that's what they would do. They would do all that kind of fun stuff. So here in the house, you can just imagine the turmoil and everything that went on here, the screaming, the yelling. The men would be put back outside. That night, there was 4 generals that they met in the parlor here, and they decided they were going to leave here the next day, but leave their wounded because there's places here that could help them out. It was a great plan. They were happy about it because they split their forces when they got down to Tennessee. Half of them went to Shiloh and half of them went to Nashville. But unfortunately, they didn't plan on the Union coming so fast after them. 2 days afterwards, guess who comes down 31W or the Dixie Highway? And it's the Union Army. They see this house. They also know that there's Confederates here because they've been scouting the area. They want this house also. 45 foot tall, it's got a cupola on it, you can see in all directions. Plus, if you notice how strategic the house is with all the windows, right, you can see in every direction. Yeah. They want to take over the house. Well, they find the Confederate soldiers, they dispatch every one of them. Now we have mass graves on the property. They came in and they disliked Southern sympathizers, helping out the enemy. They took everything out of this house. All 3 of them were basically done in that fashion. The people were treated horribly. They didn't have slaves here. The Union treated them awful. They hung them, beat them. They raped and pillaged through here. It was just a horrible thing. And they stayed here for about a week and a half before they went into Franklin, which is 6 miles away, because the Union rules in fear. Sherman's army and 2 of the guys that were basically caused most of the crap that went on in the Civil War in Kentucky and Tennessee, like Gallatin, were both trained and taught by, what's his name again?
Payne.
No, Payne's one of them. Redheaded Demon Burbage is the other one. Sherman. Well, and Sherman was in a mental institution up there, and they let him out. And these guys were underneath of it. They went down to Franklin and just massively killed hundreds of people. If you were a sympathizer, you were going to get hung, shot, whatever. Same thing happened in Gallatin with Pope. That's what they ruled by fear. They wanted them to know, you better leave your house, because if you know what's happening up here, you don't want that to happen when we get there. Many people didn't heed that warning, but it was just terrible times. That's why the Civil War, to me, I hate using it, the name Civil War. I like using the war between the states because there's nothing civil about the war. If you look at Miss Harriet here, that picture I mentioned was taken in late '63. She's sporting a really interesting thing in her left hand. It is a wooden man hand.
Oh.
It's prosthetic.
Prosthetic. It's shaped like this. Her thumb's way back like that.
Oh,
It gives her
okay,
a
it
push-pull. Pretty horrible thing. She comes to an aid of one of her housemates. She's thrown to the ground. A union officer helps her up and says, "You'll never do that again," and grabs a saber and cuts her arm off.
Wow.
So that's how she got that beauty. So she is also the one who stays here the longest. Andrew dies in '66. She stays from 1854 all the way until 1918. 54 years she's here at the house. Andrew dies 4 years by herself. When Andrew dies in '66, he gives property to 25 slave families that wanted to stay with him, buried out back by where his first wife. Harriet had 54 years to think about that, I guess. And when she sells the house to Dr. William, the only other second owner to the house, in 1918, she moves to Bowling Green, dies at 98 years old in Bowling Green. They read her will out, and her will states you must go to Octagon Hall, dig up Andrew Jackson Caldwell. I don't want him laying with his first wife. So 54 years later, they dig Andrew Jackson Caldwell up, whatever was left of him.
Yeah.
And brought him there and buried him with her.
She said, no.
Yeah. Andrew was a sympathizer. He decides to become a super sympathizer, and how you are going to affect the supply lines and everything for the Union? Derail trains. He derails a train and puts it on fire and burns it. Groups out here, they see a white light, they see a train, and they see 3 cars, and they can see people moving in the cars, and the next thing you know, they start taking pictures. None of the pictures come out, except the picture that comes out, and the train's on fire. Next thing that happens is it disappears right in front of their eyes.
It's kind of creepy.
That is it. And there's a picture in front of you there. That was taken about 4 months ago. That is out in our barn. If you turn it the right way, you'll see a lady sitting out there in the barn. Can you see?
Yep.
Well, she is standing there. If you look at her left hand, you'll see that it's kind of weird.
Oh.
Left arm.
Yep.
And if you see there's an imprint of a thumb hanging out of the
Yep.
That is what I believe to be Harriet out in the barn.
Huh.
The outside of the hall, I'll tell you, there's 400 people roaming around out there, and plus the slaves. And this whole area just draws them in. This is like a magnet. You'll see portals opening up on the ground. I'll show you something that appeared when we're talking about UFOs and other things that are weird. There's 2. You got a big white door in the basement. You look straight through it. See when you open that up, wave your hand in there, a light will come on, some close and some too light, and look straight down, and you'll see the tunnel is fully collapsed. It runs in 2 different directions. It runs over here outside and goes in front of that building, that chimney over there. 12 feet underground, there's a 40-foot room. And then it also runs between 2 barns and goes out into a cave system. Interesting stuff. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure it was covered up by whatever.
Totally covered up. All the closets in the same shaft.
But the way the house is built, it's actually perfect
Right, exactly.
for little hidey holes like that.
Exactly.
And you said this was built in 1847.
1847.
And what is that room? What is back there?
That was actually their first bedroom. Dr. Williams took out the